The internet is full of nutrition, but you can learn to spot all that nutrition crap. Here are my top 9 red flags to look out for. How's it going, guys? My name's Richie Kirwan, and today I'm going to do something that I've wanted to do for a long time. I'm going to share some tips that you can use to spot nutrition claims online so you don't fall for all the nutri-nonsense that fills the internet. If you've watched a few of my videos, you'll know that I try to help you understand how nutrition science works, so you'll have a better understanding of how food and diet can affect your body. To do that, I use science-based information, not just from 1 or 2 studies, but based on the totality of all the scientific evidence we have available. The problem is that on the internet, I see so many examples of nutrition misinformation, which is when someone gets something wrong, and disinformation, which is when someone intentionally makes something up or lies every single day. At best, this bad information confuses people. And I'm sure many of you have been confused by different messages you've heard about nutrition. At worst, it could be downright dangerous information that could affect someone's health very badly. So, without further ado, here are a few red flags to watch out for. Red flag number 1, they love using the word toxin. Why is that a problem? Well, in nutrition, biochemistry, and toxicology, there's a phrase: the dose makes the poison. You see, many foods can contain substances that in isolated, high amounts could be dangerous, but in amounts normally found in food may have no harmful effects at all, or might even be beneficial. Some toxins, in the amounts found normally in food, actually help to strengthen your body and make you healthier. This is a process called hormesis, and it's one of the reasons vegetables are so beneficial for health. You hear this a lot with some people saying plants are toxic, for example. If that's the case, why do some of the healthiest diets on earth, as determined by science, contain huge amounts of plants? It doesn't make sense because toxins in edible plants aren't bad for us. Red flag number 2, they use anecdotes instead of evidence. Anecdotes are interesting stories from real people, but the plural of anecdote isn't evidence. Personal stories about the effects of diet, whether they're positive or negative, can and do have powerful effects on people's perceptions of that diet. You're more likely to follow a diet if you hear about someone who might have had a similar problem to you and then tried out some diet and had loads of success with it. But just because one person experienced an effect doesn't mean others will. That's why we do nutrition science research. And a real nutritionist knows that scientific evidence based on multiple well-designed studies and with lots of participants is much more reliable than an anecdote, more reliable than a story. Red flag number 3, they focus on the foods you need to avoid. Why is that an issue? Well, fear is a very powerful marketing tool, and it's easier to get people to change their diet by making them afraid of certain foods. So they just avoid them. Have you heard of people rattling on about how you have to avoid gluten or sugar or dairy or whatever because it's terrible for you? That's the kind of BS I'm talking about. Focusing on foods to avoid helps create a common enemy, which is another marketing strategy. Responsible nutritionists focus more on foods that are important to include in the diet, and this is called inclusive nutrition. Okay, red flag number 4. They talk about the conspiracies to make people unhealthy. The use of conspiracy theories is another powerful marketing tool. It causes fear that they, whoever they are out to make the public unhealthy through their diet. This is also a way to make people fearful of nutrition research because they are behind all the corrupt research and conventional nutrition advice. There's never a real explanation of who they are or why they want to make everyone unhealthy, but it's a really common trope. As soon as someone starts talking about conspiracies, it's a good indication that anything else that they say about nutrition is probably going to be too. Red flag number 5, they deny all science except when it supports their beliefs. A good example of this is when some online nutrition guru claims that all nutrition science research is useless because of X, Y, or Z. But then, as soon as they find a study that supports their diet, they can't wait to shove it in people's face and scream, here's the proof for what they were saying all along. All nutrition research is useful because altogether, it helps bring us closer to an approximation of the truth. If someone says nutrition science is bogus when it doesn't support their views, but then jumps all over research that does support their views, then that person is simply cherry picking research and doesn't understand how science works. Okay, red flag number 6. They use black and white thinking. Black and white thinking in nutrition is like when someone says, well, if meat is good, plants must be bad, or vice versa. Nutrition science isn't black and white. Just because a food may have a negative effect in one context doesn't mean it can't have a positive effect in another context, or in different amounts, or in different people. Take fiber, for example. Getting a high level of fiber in your diet can reduce your risk of being constipated. But if you're not used to eating fiber and you suddenly switch to a high fiber diet, you might get an upset stomach or gas. Does that mean that fiber is bad for you? No. Saying foods are either good or bad in any amount without giving context is just lazy thinking and promotes bad relationships with food. Nutrition isn't black and white, and your food choices don't have to be either. Red flag number 7. They promote ancestral diets. Just because our ancestors ate something doesn't mean it benefited their long-term health. Our ancestors only needed to live long enough to reproduce, which means living a long life into their 80s or 90s wasn't that important. We also don't know in detail what our ancestors ate. That's why I said ancestral diets in air quotes. We just don't know for sure. You also need to think about which ancestors are we talking about? From which geographical location? And from what point in time? Where do we draw that evolutionary line and why? We don't need to know how our ancestors ate though, because we have plenty of real scientific evidence from now that tells us what types of diets can be beneficial. Red flag number 8. They base their advice on mechanistic or animal research alone. Mechanistic research in nutrition is often carried out in test tubes or petri dishes using cell lines and isolated nutrients, not in real humans or with real foods. Animal research is carried out, obviously enough, on animals like mice, rats, pigs, or monkeys, not on humans. Mechanistic and animal research is absolutely essential for developing nutrition science because it teaches us the underlying mechanisms of how nutrients might behave. But just because something happens in cell culture or in animal models doesn't mean that it will happen in humans when they eat a certain food. And we have plenty of human research that doesn't match up with mechanistic or animal studies. This is why research in humans, looking at real outcomes like weight loss or heart disease, is much more reliable and interpretable than mechanistic and animal research. Red flag number 9. They focus on one best diet for everyone. Have you ever heard someone go on and on about their new diet and how it's supposed to fix everything in their life, from helping them to lose weight to curing their broken leg and saving them from depression? They probably love it so much that they tell everyone to follow it, right? The thing is, people are very similar, but what works for one person may not always work for others. Despite our similarities, everyone is a unique, special snowflake. Assuming that there is one best universal diet for everyone is very dangerous thinking. That's the problem with following any diet that has a name. It locks you into some stupid made-up rules that may not be right for you. Following your own diet based on the specific foods that help you feel best and stay healthy is probably the best diet of all for you. So after all that, I really hope these tips will help you understand a little better who you should be listening to when it comes to nutrition and who you should avoid. The internet really is full of nutrition, so learning how to avoid it can only be a good thing. As always, if you have any more questions, let me know in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe to the Myprotein YouTube channel for more great evidence-based nutrition information.